Hello and welcome to a TB3 University Special Edition. I'm Colby with TB3 Sports Talk. As you guys can see, I'm all by myself. I'm all by my lonesome, but I had to get into TB3 CCPH Studios to talk about your USF Bulls because they are starting to play this week. The USF Bulls will be starting their 2025 season on next Thursday. So that's going to be August 28th at 5:30 p.m. Yeah, weird start time against the Boise State Broncos, the 25th ranked Boise State Broncos. The Boise State Broncos that are coming off a playoff appearance. And I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk more about USF. This is going to be a season preview edition. Going to be a shorter video, kind of focusing on who's in, who's out for USF, what to expect, who's kind of caught the eyes of us and other media members around USF during camp. So that's kind of what we're going to get into. But yeah, I don't know. First, I guess I'll ask you guys if you're watching. But what do you guys think about the 5:30 start time on Thursday? I think it's weird. I think that's a very odd, time for them to start. But I recognize that they are, they're trying to do doubleheader. ESPN is trying to do doubleheader. I think it's Cincinnati versus Nebraska. I hope you guys can't hear the rain. It's pouring here. Anyways, Cincinnati versus Nebraska is going to be at 9 p.m. I think they actually play that game at Arrowhead Stadium, so they're trying to fit in a doubleheader. I respect it. But yeah, 5:30 Raymond James Stadium in the heat. I would actually argue that 5:30 actually might be hotter than a noon game, just because, man, I've been out there at 4 or 5 o'clock this week. It is hot. But that's just my thoughts. And they're also, USF is wearing all black. They're wearing the black uniforms they debuted last year. In the heat, maybe it's a power play, maybe it's a look them in their eyes and say we're stronger and we're tougher than you. But I don't know. I don't know if it's the wisest thing. As Tampa fans, we know that we have seen the Bucks, they always were white at home early in the season. They used the heat to their advantage. I don't know if this was the wisest thing for USF to do, but they've already decided they're wearing the black uniforms. Byron Brown looks great in the uniform, so let's get into it. 2025 USF Bulls. So if we look at USF's kind of roster here, I got it pulled up. Cornerback is some familiar faces. I think the headliner at cornerback is Deshaun Rucker. He's a guy who's gotten some preseason love. Lindy's and Athlon, kind of on their first and second and third teams. All AAC. And then the second corner is going to be a little bit different. We saw it kind of filled by a bunch of different guys. Some guys to look out for at that position. Jarvis Lee played some time last year. Ben Knox. But I think the guy that I'm looking for the most right now in that position, listed as a defensive back, but James Chenault, I think he's a guy that you could look for in cornerbacks. And as we're just kind of on it, safety. Let's think about safety. So Tavin Ward will be returning for USF, had some really strong games, kind of up and down, kind of like the USF defense last year in general, but Tavin Ward definitely had some good games. He's returning, and then a guy that I'm very, very excited to talk about and see play is Fred Gaskin. This is a guy who's stepping in for USF in the safety position. He's a 4-star recruit, one of the highest recruits actually ever in USF history. He was a 4-star. He's the third highest recruit according to Rivals in USF history. He was a freshman last year, coming into his sophomore year. I think this is a guy that you can look at in Fred Gaskin as a guy who could potentially be a first-team All-AAC player in the league. I think he's that good. He's explosive. He's fast. He has a nose for the ball. This guy is someone to watch out for. If you are trying to talk to your pals about USF and they maybe don't know ball, tell them to look for Fred Gaskin because this is a guy that's going to be a problem, in my opinion. I think let's just, I don't know. Sorry, you guys are going to have to bear with me. It's just me talking, so I'm kind of just doing stuff on the fly. But, yeah, I just want to look up some statistics because the USF defense was very inconsistent in 2024. You look at kind of the statistics. I think there were some really good games. I think about the Alabama game. I know that game got away from USF at the end, but a very impressive defensive performance for 3.5 quarters, pretty much. And then you just look at games down the stretch, like stifling teams like Charlotte and Tulsa. And I know these are weaker teams, but these teams, they struggled. Even the Memphis game, that was a crazy game. The USF's offense, did not have much success, but man, USF's defense was impressive against Memphis. An experienced quarterback they had last year in Seth Heineken, who is no longer there. And, it's just very, very, defense was up and down. I'm looking at the stats. USF allowed 29.8 points per game. That's 7th in the American Conference, in American Conference play. Definitely interesting to kind of just see how, a lot of players coming back and maybe some players stepping up, young players that can help the team out. But I'm very fascinated to kind of dive into this USF defense and see how they're going to do. But yeah, secondary I think is a very solid position for them. Again, Deshaun Rucker I think is going to be good. Ben Knox, Jarvis Lee, these guys are going to play. Isaiah Guy, who I'm pretty sure is that Isaiah Guy. Where did he come from? He was a transfer. Georgia State transfer Isaiah Guy. I knew that. So, yeah, I think he's a guy that's had some buzz around him at camp. Very, very, I think the secondary is going to be solid and definitely something to look out for. But I think as we move down, I think we have to get to, I'm going from the secondary down in the defense. So now we're going to hit linebackers. And I think linebacker, I don't actually think it's very much of an argument. I think linebacker is the best position group on this USF team. Just to kind of, mention it. Oh, see, all my stuff got out of whack when I hit stuff. Again, bear with me, guys. I'm trying my best. Linebacker. So, you guys got to think about Jalen Schuler, a guy, a TB3. TB3 loves Jalen Schuler on the podcast. A guy who got his graduate year. He's coming back. He has a lot of experience. He has a lot of success in this league. Was banged up to start last season, but a huge key to the defense, and I'm excited to see what Jalen Schuler can do in his COVID, his unk year, if you will, Jalen Schuler. And then, another guy, Mac Harris. Mac Harris was the leading tackler and the leading sack man on the USF Bulls last year. Had just a phenomenal season, probably one of the biggest breakout players for USF in 2024. He was very, very good. Those two guys are just as solid as they come. And then you got guys, Rodney Hill. He had a very, very solid season last year. He is he's a sophomore, I think, or junior. Decommitted, enrolled. Yeah, he's a sophomore. And yeah, Rodney Hill, just really, really good player. You look at his season stats last year. Sorry, again, just bear with me, guys. You're just going to have to deal with it. Oh, boy. Rodney Hill. He had with 18 tackles last year. Got no sacks. But yeah, he has some experience last year. I think he's been a guy people have had their eye on in camp this year. Definitely someone that I'm looking at as a player who could potentially be a solid linebacker guy. But again, it's the linebackers. It's about those guys. It's about your Jalen Schuler. It's about your Mac Harris's. These guys have just been steady, solid players for your USF Bulls for a long time. And there was one guy I wanted to talk about. I don't know. We'll see. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Linebackers. I would say linebacker is by far the strongest position on USF's roster. And we'll move to defensive line. Defensive line, there has been a lot of turnover. R.J. Perry from last year, one of the studs from USF. He is in the NFL. Doug Blue Eli, he transferred away. Bernard Gooden, he is an LSU Tiger now. So a lot of defensive line transfers, which has led to a lot of defensive line transfers in for the USF Bulls. And sorry, chat. So on defensive end, you got guys like Michael Williams coming back. He's a guy, a name we recognize. Then you have a guy like Denard Flowers, who's a transfer in for USF. These guys, they are definitely going to need to take a step forward because USF's defensive line did not have, very many, strong showings for this team last year. I mean, you look at the sacks. I mean, the majority of the sacks for USF last year came from linebackers and safeties and blitzes. Kind of like when, if you're any Bucs fans are listening, kind of like how we talked about the Bucs, where there's a lot of production, whether it's blitzing your linebackers or your safeties down. Todd Orlando has kind of a similar scheme, I would say, to Todd Bowles, but you want to have guys who can win and pass rush the quarterback on their own, and that's where you get from the defensive end. So I'm looking for guys like Michael Williams and Denard Flowers to kind of give that USF that boost because it's a valuable thing to have. I mean, I think USF, their defensive line was solid last year, but man, they are bringing in these athletes, they're bringing in this size. They have all the capabilities to be a dominant team in the trenches in the American Conference. They just have to hit, and these guys just have to improve and play to the level that they were recruited to and the level that USF wants to hold them to. It's very key. I think trenches is going to be a key storyline for the USF Bulls this season. I think, quite frankly, they got whacked in the trenches way too often, especially early on in the season. Because you look at 2024. I mean, you look at the games that were in the first 6 games of the season as opposed to the last 6 or 7. The first 6 games were against far better opponents. I mean, you had the Miami game, you had the Alabama game, you had the Tulane, you had the Memphis game. These are probably the 4 best teams that USF played last year were all in the first half of the schedule. That was, rough. USF started off very, very, it was a tumultuous season for them. And, yeah, so, and the reason why is they were just getting whiffed and whooped in the trenches. I mean, Tulane rolled all over them. They were able to do what they want. No pass rush, no effective run game. Offensive and defensive lines getting whipped. Same thing with Miami. I mean, Cam Ward, I don't think, got touched the entire game in Raymond James Stadium last year. That has to improve. And even Memphis, I mean, running is so important for this Alex Golesh, Joel Gordon offense. And without the running game, this offense is not going to be effective. I know that when we get to offense, we'll talk about, getting quarterback Byron Brown back is such a huge key. But rushing attack is so crucial. It is so crucial, for this USF team. And just, seeing... And that starts in the trenches. I mean, just thinking about, you have really good guys. You had good secondary plays. You have good linebackers. You have good running backs. These guys can kind of help, correct the mistakes that were made by the guys in the trenches. But if these guys can start winning in the trenches, especially against upper-level American opponents, your Memphises, your Tulanes, your UTSAs, your North Texases, your Navies, those guys, that will lead to USF having a more successful season because they want to compete at the top of the conference. I understand that maybe the expectations were too lofty for USF, last year. I think there was a lot of people, because of the Byron Brown, because of just kind of the excitement around the program, thinking about, maybe it's a sneaky college football playoff team. Oh, maybe they can pull an upset against Miami. Maybe they are ready to dethrone Memphis. And that was just not the case last year. The team had a lot of holes, a lot of injury problems as well. And for USF, the goal right now should be to compete at the top of the conference. That's the thing that really USF, since they've joined the American Conference, really has not done. They've never won an American championship in football. And being at the top of the conference, getting a chance to, potentially play an American championship game, that's the stuff that USF needs to count on, and they need to go for, and they need to strive for, because they have the recruiting class. They have some of the highest recruiting classes in the American Conference. They have the good transfer portals. They have the NIL funds. They have to be able to compete at the top of the conference, or that's when you start saying, are we stuck with this regime? Is it time to move on to a new one? But again, we'll get to that storylines. Defense. So we'll go back. We're going to keep going down the line. Defensive line. This is probably a position that I'm pretty excited about, the interior of the defensive line. It all starts up front. One of my favorite players last year, big 97 Jahari Grant, the run stuffer, big fella in the middle. And then another guy that I'm excited about, Vanderbilt transfer Devin Lee. He comes in with a lot of SEC experience, over 30 games of SEC experience, and I think he is going to be a guy who can bring some toughness into the USF's interior defensive line room. This is a group that, again, trenches are so important. DJ Harris was the guy I was talking about, linebacker, that I'm excited to see. Trenches are so important for this USF team. I think these guys will be able to help them. All right, let's move to offense. So, offensively, I think we start with the quarterback position, because it's important to remember that, last season we did not have the guy for USF, the guy whose face is on USF's, on their game day posts, on their whatever. The face of USF, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, is Byron Brown. He's a guy who had a phenomenal freshman season. I look at this, in 2023, Byron Brown threw for 3,292 yards, and he also rushed for over 800 yards. Meaning he went for over 4,000 yards total in 2023. A phenomenal season. Really, really, just really good, exciting, as, in his first year starting. Just something that, we could really get excited about as USF fans. Just someone who, it kind of reminds you of, Quentin Flowers. Just an athletic quarterback that can make big throws and could be just a kind of a giant killer with the group of five, because that's just kind of the mold of a group of five quarterback that can do damage and, can lead these teams to these big upsets, and these, high-profile Group of 5 teams is the mobile, athletic quarterback that can do it all, and that's kind of what we saw with Byron Brown. But unfortunately, Byron Brown, he had a knee injury, last season. He missed the final, I think it was the final 7 games of the season. And, I just... Not only did Byron Brown... Where's my point? Okay, Byron Brown. Not only did Byron Brown miss a lot of games with injury, obviously going down in that Tulane game, only playing, the first, portion of the season. I think it was the first 5 games. Pretty sure it was the first 5 games of the season. Then he missed the rest of the year with the knee injury. Kind of, USF didn't fully tell us what was going on. It was kind of like, oh, he's getting back, he's getting healthy, he might be back. But in reality, he had a major knee injury, had to get surgery. That's just kind of what it is. So he's back, fully healthy, playing in camp, excited and ready to see him go. But I will say, even before the knee injury last year, Byron Brown had some completion and accuracy problems. We saw it shown off, really in a lot of the games. I think, that was, I remember the opener against Bethune-Cookman. We were excited, we were happy about the skill positions, we were excited about the big win for USF, but, we kind of noticed the lack of accuracy for Byron Brown, and then the next week, or 2 weeks ago, it reared its ugly head against Alabama. I mean, there were some missed deep ball throws that, really could change the complexion of the game. And, for us USF fans and guys watching us and hearing the podcast, and me, it definitely, you could see some accuracy problems with Byron Brown, and that's got to improve in 2025. Just going off the play from 2023 to 2024, Byron Brown really almost took a step back in his play early on in the season. He bulked up. His running and his durability in the run game should be a lot better, which is an improvement. It's always good to have the threat of a running quarterback, but USF has to be a two-dimensional offense this year. USF has to get the pass game going. They have to build the momentum in the passing game because, there's too many times where, again, this speed, high-powered Alex Golesh offense, would just stall. And it would stall because of inaccurate passes. It would stall because of bad blocking. And that can't happen. That puts too much stress on the defense. The system has to be built up with momentum. That's all about up-tempo offense is all about the momentum that's built up and keeping the defense on their heels. You can't build out momentum with inaccurate passes. I think this is a big year for Byron Brown. This is a big year for USF's offense because they, by all records and, statistics, they took a step back in 2024. USF's offense was dynamic in 2023. It was exciting, and the defense was just flat out terrible. And then last year, you saw the defense kind of come back and was a competitive and a respectable unit for a lot, and actually had some really, really strong games throughout the 2024 season. But the offense took a step back, and whether that is, because Byron Brown was injured, or whether that was, just players not playing up to the level that they're capable of, that's what we're going to see because, again, Byron Brown is back this year. If we could get some iteration of the 2023 USF offense with some iteration and maybe improvement of the 2024 USF defense, that's when this team becomes lethal, and that's when we get excited. So that's kind of really what I'm looking for is can Byron Brown lead this offense back to its 2023 levels? And it's going to be difficult. It really is going to be difficult because a lot of a lot of high-level, experienced USF. Honestly, I want to say GOATs. Like really, some of the most decorated players in USF history are not going to be on the team. And we'll start off with the running backs, not as decorated. I think you guys know who I'm referencing when I talk about decorated, but USF's running backs. You had the running back trio, just a dynamic trio of Naquan Wright, Tayron Keith, and Kelly Joyner. All three of these guys graduated. They are off and not on USF anymore. That is 17,028 yards total of just rushing that USF lost with that trio of running backs. That is something that the Bulls are going to have to, they're going to have to find production, and I think a lot of this production is going to be found in the transfer portal. So when you look at some of the guys in the USF running room, I think a guy to watch is Sam Franklin. He is a guy who actually transferred from Oklahoma. He did not play a lot at Oklahoma last year, but, the year before when he played with UT Martin, he was a plus 1,000-yard rusher. He was one of the most decorated running backs at that school. He had phenomenal seasons for a couple years, and then he went to Oklahoma. Didn't really get the opportunity and the time that he would have liked, but now he's at USF. A lot more opportunity. A full opportunity. I mean, no running backs really of note coming back for USF. Sam Franklin is a guy that could be a really, really big piece of USF's offense. He also will likely be USF's kick returner. Alex Wallace actually was quoted saying that Sam Franklin is a Kelly Joyner type running back. And for me, when I hear the name Kelly Joyner, I get excited. That is a great name to be compared to. I'm a huge fan of Kelly Joyner, and I hope to be a huge fan of Sam Franklin. Excuse me. And another running back to watch for USF is Cartavius Norton. He is a Charlotte transfer. He rushed for about 500 yards last year in the American Conference with Charlotte. Before he was on Charlotte, he was with Iowa State. He actually crossed paths with current USF offensive coordinator Joel Gordon while he was at Iowa State. Now they are reunited. Cartavius Norton, this is a big, big back. He is plus, I think he's 220 pounds of just solid, a big physical running back, but he also showed some speed. He's clocked at over 20 miles per hour at one point last year. Cartavius Norton, that's my guy I'm looking for. I think Cartavius Norton is going to have a monster monster season for the USF Bulls. I am excited to see him. And I think that, some of the extra size and the punishing, I think USF's rushing attack is going to be punishing this year. You got a guy like Cartavius Norton, who's a little bit different than I would say any other USF backs. I know Nacon Wright, he could get the tough yards, but I don't think he had the size that Cartavius Norton had. And you have Byron Brown, who's a much more physical and willing runner than Bryce Archie was last year. I think the physicality of USF's rushing attack this season could be a huge storyline. I think it could be a huge improvement. I think and again, it comes down to, can they win in the trenches? Can they win in the trenches is the question. USF's offensive line is kind of just something that I found out about USF's offensive line that was fascinating to me is they have, I think it's seven players with 10-plus games of starting experience in the college level. They have a bunch of old veterans, and again, they have a lot of guys that they're bringing back. I mean, Mike Lofton, and Cole Best will be battling out for that center position. Cole Best was the guy who was, in the center position to end last season. I think he's kind of the favorite to win that spot. Had a really, really good impact last season, but again, we talked about the schedule in the second half last year was very, very tough, so I'd like to see it against the bigger teams. Thomas Schrader, Zane Herring, these guys are coming back and looking to start. And just the offensive line as a whole has a lot of experience, but some of that experience isn't exactly good experience, isn't exactly experience of producing at a high level. But again, offensive lines, it's hard for people to understand the cohesiveness and the chemistry that is required to be a good offensive line. So with USF kind of bringing all these guys back, it is a positive sign for the USF's offensive line that the chemistry, the cohesiveness, and the togetherness of the unit should be kind of a plus for USF. And hopefully they can win more in the trenches because, again, I think USF, they had some explosive games, but, man, too many times last season where USF's running backs were getting hit in the backfield, getting hit at the line of scrimmage. I mean, just have to be able to protect the quarterback and have to be able to carve holes in the running game because, again, the running game is so important for USF's offense. Receivers. Let's move on to receivers. That's our last position group, and then we will get to some storylines, and then we'll get to my predictions. Yeah, my predictions. So, very, very interesting. Last year, USF, they lost our GOAT, America's wide receiver, the grittiest in the land, Sean Atkins, USF's all-time leading receiver, will be gone. Someone needs to sign him in the NFL if you're watching this, NFL teams. Sean Atkins deserves a chance in the NFL. That's all I'm saying. But as we move on down, the guy that a lot of people are very, very high on for USF, and rightfully so, is Keyshawn Singleton. This is a guy who had over 400 yards receiving last year, and all 400 of his yards came in the final 7 games of the season. Alex Golesh has come out and said that being a receiver in his system it's a learning curve. It's hard to learn. It takes some time, and it took time for Keyshawn Singleton. But, as a young player to, produce like that for the second half of the season, have some big games against UAB, against, I think it was Charlotte or Tulsa, I can't remember correctly. It was very, very impressive. The big game, or the big play ability for Keyshawn Singleton is something to kind of get excited about. And I really do think Keyshawn Singleton has the capability of being a 1,000-yard receiver. And I know USF doesn't throw it around as much as some other teams, but, if USF, can get the play action, can get the big plays. I think Keyshawn Singleton could be a guy who could be first or second team All-American Conference. I for sure think you look at Singleton, this is a guy that should be producing about 700 to 800 yards on the season. But I think he's a guy who could break out and maybe get to 1,000. So I'm excited about him. Transfer Chaz Nimrod from Tennessee could be a player in this. Corey Pettigrew is a young guy, a freshman, but he really impressed me at the spring game. I know that's just a spring game, but why are we not there? I mean, what are we doing if we can't at least overreact about the spring game? Let's overreact. Corey Pettigrew had a great spring game. I was excited to see him. Okay, I'm going to try to say his name. This is a guy who has been getting a lot of raving reviews at camps. Mudia Rubin. He is a Stanford transfer, if I am not mistaken. This is a guy that's a huge, very smart guy, obviously. Stanford transfer. Yes, I was right. But this is a guy who has been getting raving reviews, and he could potentially be a starting receiver on the other side of Keyshawn Singleton, which is not really what we expected, but could be a breakout player for USF. I'm pretty excited about what he brings, and then also Jaquan Smith, the speedster, might be able to bring some big playability. So USF, their wide receiver room is a lot of unprovens, but also a lot of talent. And again, in USF's system, you don't need 3 or 4 high-level producing wide receivers. You need the threats, and you need some big playability, but they're not spreading the ball out and just chucking it around. USF wants to establish and rely on the run game, and that's hopefully what they'll do. And hopefully Keyshawn Singleton can be a breakout player on the outside for them to kind of balance with the running game. So that's your team. That's your players. Feel free to check out the roster. Feel free to ask any questions. I know I didn't go through every single player, but again, we don't have time for all that. So, USF 2025. What are some key storylines? First one I've already mentioned and already talked a lot. Can they win in the trenches? Can the defensive line be meaner? Can the defensive line stop the run better? And can the offensive line hold its own? There's some high-level teams on USF's schedule. There's some teams that are physical. I mean, opening game, Boise State, I know they don't have Ashton Jeanty, but they have 4 out of their 5 offensive line starters coming back. That is a physical team. That's a team that you have to, win in the trenches. That's a big, big game. Week 1 against Boise State is a huge game. It's a game against a group of 5 team. If you want to talk playoff, you have 2 higher level. You have the group of 5 representative of the playoffs coming to your house. If you want even a semblance of a hope to get in the playoff, you got to beat that team. You got to come out at home and beat that team. Second thing is big. USF has not beat a ranked opponent since 2016. They're on an 18-game losing streak against ranked opponents. Something's got to give. Alex Golesh, the bowl game against San Jose State, that was his first win against a team that finished the year with a winning record in his tenure. He has to start racking up some big wins. He has 3 opportunities out of conference, and he has plenty of opportunities in conference. He has to start, and it starts there, and the physicality starts there. Obviously, we know that the first 3 games, Boise State, Florida, and Miami in a row, physicality, you might not have the horses exactly to keep up, but you might have the experience. And again, these are the games where you're looking to hold your own in the trenches, because again, when you get from a group of 5 team to an SEC or an ACC or a high level group of 5 team, the trenches are what differentiates each other, not the quarterbacks, not the receivers, the trenches. So can USF be one of those group of 5 teams with solid trenches against high level teams, and can they win against American teams? And then another story is Byron Brown. We've talked about it again. Can Byron Brown, get back to his 2023 form? Can he be an accurate quarterback? Can USF have a 2-dimensional offense? I don't know. Leave a comment. Let us know. Can they have a 2-dimensional offense? We talked about it. Running backs, who's going to step up? A lot of production missed. Who is going to step up for USF in the running back room? We shall see. Receivers, again, who's going to take that Sean Atkins role? Defensively. Can we see more consistency for USF? Can they prevent the big plays? Big plays have for sure hurt USF in the past couple of years. And I think if they can limit the big plays, they can be more consistent. I think there's a lot of good and a lot of positive from USF's and Todd Orlando, a guy who I was not fully sold on, but I think he had a very, very solid season calling defensive plays last year. And I'm just excited to see a more consistent USF team. This is kind of the year where the talent that Alex Golesh has recruited bleeds in and kind of takes over, the defense and the offense. This is kind of, the third year is really, where a team takes the identity of their coach and where you want to see the coach's culture and the coach's vision kind of take shape. And that's kind of this is a huge year for Alex Golesh. again, we have given Alex Gola his flowers, which he rightfully deserves. I mean, USF was in the dumps with Jeff Scott. I mean, a terrible situation. Alex Gola, he comes, he takes over, he takes over a program that I'm sure not a lot of people would want to take over. Not a lot of people would be, very. They just wouldn't, and it was tough. And they went from 2-10 to a winning record and going to a bowl game, and that was very, very exciting. You beat Syracuse. What a season! Then last year, you were kind of expecting USF to take somewhat of a step forward, and maybe expectations were too lofty last year, but you were expecting some sort of a step forward, and USF ended up with the same exact record, 7-6. Got the bowl game win, but again, very similar outcomes. Didn't get the big win. Didn't really take the step forward. But again, some of that could be because your starting quarterback was hurt. Some of that could have been whatever. But again, it's the second year, so the coach doesn't fully have his talent in. He's still recovering from the mess that was Jeff Scott. Transfer portal kind of helps you recuperate a little quicker, but still, it's important. Again, it's just important to understand that it doesn't take 2 years, but third season, third season is usually where a coach needs to make that jump. Usually where a coach needs to have the ability to show the culture of his program through the play on the field. And that's kind of what USF needs from Alex Golesh. I think that it would be disappointing to see USF middling in the conference, mediocre, not win any big games again, and end up with 6 or 7 wins. It would be a disappointing season. So you want to see that step forward. You want to see USF, even if you're not going to win one of your first 3 games. I mean, I look at at North Texas, at Memphis, at Navy, at home against UTSA. Those are 4 higher level American teams. You got to get a couple wins against those teams. You have to. You really have to, and you have to at least be in the top 3 or 4 in the conference. An American championship may not be feasible. It really might, but it's important to. You have to get those. You have to get these wins. You have to be able to just compete at a higher level than you did last season, and you have to show a step forward. So that's kind of what I think. And this is a key season for Alex Golesh in terms of, can he take the step forward? And I don't know. Really, really fascinating. So again, we will have a Boise State game preview out. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna do my record predictions, and I'm gonna do a hot take. So I'm gonna say this. I am going to say that USF will go. I want to be positive, but I want to be realistic. I'm going to say USF will go 7-5 in 2024, or 5. 7-5 in 2025. I want to see them beat Boise State in the home opener, but I just don't see it. I see them starting the season off 0-3, unfortunately. Then you pick up a couple wins, and I think at Navy and the 4 I talked about, North Texas, UTSA, Navy, and Memphis. I think you split those 2-2. You beat all the rest of the low-level American teams. You go 7-5. You have 1 win better, and hopefully you will get to a bowl game. Hopefully you can get that 8th win at the bowl game and take a step forward for the program. My hot take, what is my hot take going to be? My hot take, I guess I already said one. I think Keyshawn Singleton will go for 1,000 yards receiving. And I think my other hot take will be USF will be a top 3 rushing offense in the American in 2025. I think the offensive line will be better. I think Norton and Franklin will be a really good running back duo. And I think that's going to be what happens. So let us know your hot take in the comments. Let us know, how you feel about USF. What's your record prediction? How do you think, will they be able to beat Boise State in game 1? I don't know. Well, we want to hear from you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is a TB3 University Special Edition. We should be back with more TB3 University throughout the season. me and Will, for sure, will be at the Boise State game in the press box covering media. So please, if you have made it here and you want more content, tune into the Bay Area Examiner. Bay Area Examiner. We will be writing and posting content for them as well as on TB3 Sports Talk. So, Bay Area Examiner for any written articles. TB3 Sports Talk on Instagram, TB3 Sports Talk on X. You got to be there. You got to be there to check out our updates and all the content we're going to be posting for USF football. On YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and on Spotify, hit the 5 stars, hit the follow. And that's all I got for you guys. Go Bulls. Throwing my horns up. Excited for 2025. Excited to do it with you guys. So I hope you guys have a beautiful and blessed